You are now listening to Ride With Me, the Fraternity Podcast.
Welcome to Ride With Me, episode 95. Today is April 8, 2023, and today's guest is our buddy Julian. Julian.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So today's co-host is little Julian.
Hi, how are you?
My son Julian. The reason why he's on the podcast today is because he read your books. But
it's such a pleasure to see you both again. It's been a minute. So not too long, but
yeah, right. So it was what, December 3rd when we met you at Comic-Con?
That's right. Yeah, LA Comic-Con, December of just this last year. Yeah.
So we met Julian at the Convention Center Comic-Con this past December, and the boys, out of everything I asked them what they wanted, they asked to buy your books. And the one thing my wife says is you never say no to books. So we went ahead and bought your books. Julian here, little Julian here, finished the first book within 9 days. And
nice.
But before we get into your books, I mean, let's get to know you. And I believe you live in Atlanta.
Yeah, close enough anyway. It's like the metropolitan Atlanta area. So technically a bit outside of it, the city itself, but. I've been here for since like 2005 or so. I kind of grew up in different places all over the world, but circumstances related to my family and my dad's job kind of led me here. And, it's been nice.
So where are you originally from?
That's a bit hard to say. I'm not trying to be coy. I honestly am not quite sure. I was born in France, but I'm not a French citizen because that's not how it works over there. My dad is Dutch, my mom's American. We just kind of moved all over the place. I lived for a little while when I was very young in Taiwan, and then when I was a teenager in Hong Kong for a brief period. So sort of all over the place.
So yeah, you travel the world, huh?
Yeah, not by choice, but it definitely was an excellent educational experience. I feel like that shaped me into who I am in a lot of ways that I couldn't foresee.
It's good to have on your resume, though. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to meet. I got to meet a lot of different kinds of people. I got to kind of immerse myself in a lot of different cultures, learn some different languages, and I think that's why the stories that I write are so. I attempt to have them be very multicultural and inclusive as well, because that's how I grew up. I grew up among many different kinds of people. So
that's good.
That impacted my personality. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, we haven't even the farthest we've gone is to Texas. We haven't got anywhere that far.
That's quite a distance. Yeah. I have a friend who lives in Texas, and America's huge. The U.S. is huge. It's going to Texas, like you compare that to traveling in Europe, you'll have crossed 3 or 4 different borders of countries by then. So
yeah,
it is impressive.
The few times we've gone to Texas, we actually drove over there. So the first time they slept through it. Second time, no, I think we went at night as well, and they slept right through it. The third time I went, I learned from my last mistakes so I woke up at 5, left by 6, because no way going at night is not a good thing. It was funny because on our way home, I was sleep deprived, and we stopped at this one restroom, and Julian's like, Dad, dude, like, 'cause I'm like, do we just have an earthquake? He's like, Dad, it's all the caffeine you're on, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you got to be prepared from what I hear. I haven't driven in that part of the country myself, but I hear that road hypnosis, especially on those long straight, if you're cutting through Arizona and New Mexico and stuff, it's like, just the long straight desert roads can do a number on your psyche.
Yeah, and most of your drive to Texas is usually through most of it's Arizona. So it's like about
that's right.
400 or 500 miles of just Arizona, and then the little piece of New Mexico, and then we went to El Paso. So the moment you hit Texas, you're kind of there.
Yeah,
you're kind of there. But so how's Atlanta? I think there's been a couple tornado warnings recently. You guys are okay?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you for asking. I mean, right where I'm living, at least, I know that some other areas have been harder hit. Just in the past couple weeks, couple months or so, it's been pretty rough. We did. I don't usually get worried, but like I got one of those notifications on my phone where it's like, seek shelter immediately. Like find the central room in your house. So I left my 2 cats and I ran into the laundry room, which is like the most centrally located. And I kind of was like holding them between the two, the washer and the dryer, just for a little extra safety. But and also we had blankets everywhere. Anyway, it's been okay. And last night I actually woke up at like 4 a.m. because I had that alarm go off and it was like tornado warning. So it's unusual to have this many this often, like kind of in a row. So that's been an experience to say the least.
Yeah, California's not used to getting all this water that we've been getting this past couple of weeks. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
It's crazy how much water we're getting. But so let's talk. What got you into writing?
That's a good question. Probably a lot of things. When I was very young, maybe like 6 or 7, the very first things I would do is I would kind of doodle and draw like super suits for my friends and I would like design mecha suits for us, and we would imagine that we're like operating these mecha suits and fighting bad guys. So you could say that just from the very beginning, I've always enjoyed like playing through story, right? Creating stories to come to have a good time with friends. And when I turned about, I think it was about 8 or 9, I tried writing my first short story and I quit after like a few pages. But then when I was about 11, I stuck with it, and I worked on the same book for probably 6 or 7 years, just sort of practicing, getting better, rewriting over and over again, and then I finally published it. And since then I've read a lot of books. I had some great tutors. I went to school and I studied writing as well. So my abilities and my craft have, I assume, gotten better. But I'm also more confident and more productive. So I don't spend years on one book anymore. I have an idea, I plan, I execute, and then I make it as good as I can, and then I move on to the next thing.
Wow. So earlier when you said I got the sense that you're also like a teacher, maybe. Am I right?
Well, I'm a tutor. So my wife is the teacher, and she's excellent, and very supportive and extremely gifted in her field. But I'm sort of an after-school tutor, so I do things like I work on ELA, SAT, ACT, social studies, just sort of a smattering, basically anything that isn't math.
Oh.
That's not my strong suit.
You and Jojo just became best friends.
Well,
Jojo, I'm
to
like
be clear,
we call him Jojo.
Well, we have some things in common, clearly. Excellent choice in name, for one. I have nothing against math. I actually enjoy it. I just don't feel confident enough to teach it. So I stick to my areas of expertise, which is, grammar, ELA, critical thinking, logic, that kind of stuff.
And that's why I asked the question about you being a teacher or something, because, I mean, I'm assuming that's exactly it is what you teach is grammar and in writing.
Yeah, I mean, I heard once that if you're good at something, you shouldn't do it for free, which I don't think is always true. But you should at least, if you can have your passion and your abilities converge and make money off of it, then why not?
Right, that's right. No, there's a lot of people that say the same thing. If you're good at something, don't do it for free. I've been taking photos for over a year now, and I've been doing it for free.
Well, maybe you can leverage that, like turn it into something if you'd like.
Well, that's what I was talking to the boys. We went to we go to our niece's, my niece, their cousins' softball games, t-ball games, and I'm in the field taking photos of the kids, of everyone, and I share the photos with my sister-in-law, who shares them with the team moms and everything, and I asked the boys, "You guys gonna bring your cameras?" They're like, "No, you're the only idiot that likes to do it for free." So they won't take their cameras out. They won't take them.
My dad was big into photography as well. I mean, it was his hobby for sure. He could have probably made something out of it, but he was a little too focused on his, like legit career, I guess you could say. He didn't want to break away from that. And to be fair, he was very successful in his line of work. But I got the sense that he always enjoyed taking photos, and he was really good at that too. He took some beautiful shots in his day.
Yeah, I was telling my wife just earlier, like, wow, I mean, the more and more I do this, it seems like the more and more I'm getting even better at it. And I've been taking photos for over what now? We're looking at 15, 20 years. I used to work for a photographer, and we used to go to quinceañeras and weddings, and pretty much he would call me Güero because of my skin. Güero, just snap photos. Just go ahead, and pretty much he taught me to what they call capture the moment. And and that's what I do. I took photos at a birthday party one day, and smile for the camera. Oh, no, I'm not here. The cameraman's not here. Just go about your business. I'm not here. And that's the way I like to take pictures. I'm more of a, like I said, capture the moment kind of a photographer. And like the kids are playing t-ball, and my best photos are the ones where you can hit them. You can see them hit the ball, and the ball's still in the air. Like it's not blurry. It's not out of the picture. It's in the frame, and the ball is just clear. I believe there's a photo that I took, and you can see the name they wrote on the ball. Like that's how how I capture the photo, where you can see the ball. The ball's crystal clear after they hit it, and you can see the family's last name on the ball. Like, okay, I'm getting better. That's awesome. I'm getting better. And for Christmas, they all got both boys got a camera. I bought mine a year ago, but they got theirs this past Christmas, and they see a squirrel outside, and it's like the dog from Up, man. Squirrel! They go and run and get their camera, and they run outside to try to take this photo of the squirrel.
Nice. Yeah. Well, true candid moments, there's something to be said for that. I think those are some of the most beautiful photos, are the ones where you're not really paying attention to the photographer. That's when you get the real slices of life.
Right. So that's the one thing this guy did teach me, was the whole capture the moment, and I enjoy doing it. And if I get asked by another family that says, "Hey, I see you take photos of your nieces. Can you do it for my kid too?" Yeah, that's the person I'm charging. That's the person I'm charging.
Yep.
You know, friends and family.
That's fair, because
friends and family know, but if a random person comes and says, "Hey, can you do the same thing for my kid?" I got a cat too, man. You gotta feed it.
Completely agree. Yeah. So well, then it's fair, because then clearly your services are in demand.
Exactly. So like you said, if you're good at something, don't do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
So were your parents a big influence in your life that made you into a writer? Did they kind of contribute?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say indirectly, depending on the situation. Like, my mom was very supportive in that she would just kind of get me all the books that I wanted. I would say, these are the books that I'd like. She would find them on, Amazon, or go to a bookstore or whatever. And I just had this steady stream of history books and, fantasy, sci-fi, just whatever I could get my hands on. So I tried to educate myself as much as possible, and she facilitated that. My dad, I guess, I suppose you could say he modeled a work ethic. He's much more on a traditional path than I am, I guess. But he definitely showed me like how to stay focused on a task and see it done.
Right.
So I would say that that's probably, if I had to point to a main contribution to like how I turned out and why I write and everything, they got out of my way and then kind of gave me a nudge. Do you know what I mean? Right.
Yeah, these kids won't, because biologically my wife's not their mom. So when we took custody of them, the first thing she tried to do was get them to read, and they refused. They hated it. Like, my wife would start off with just read it for 5 minutes, and then that 5 minutes led into 30 minutes until it finally hit a book that they really loved, and that was it. This guy right here. What happens every time we go to a store and there happens to be books in this store?
I have to go look if there's anything good.
Well, even if it's at a thrift store, man, we get to the thrift store, and they'll just take off. We were at Target earlier, and they went to where the book sections are at. And yeah,
that's awesome.
They used to hate. They didn't like to read, and like I said, man, we went to Comic-Con, and out of all the things they could have bought, the only thing we bought that day were your books. And we were still in Comic-Con. We were still at the event, and this guy was already reading it.
Well, it's such a big compliment. First of all, thank you very much for supporting me, for coming to the table, for chatting, for having me here today, and for just reading the book. That's it's all like super validating to hear. And from the tutoring perspective, and coming from a family of teachers on different sides, and my wife being a teacher, we're all definitely stoked whenever we hear that trick. Like started off with 5 minutes, now it's 30, and now they're reading like multiple books per summer.
Dude,
I try to do the same thing with my students. I trick them. I'm like, well, just start with 10 minutes a day, and one thing leads to another. If you find that right book, if you get them to read varied enough stuff, it really does snowball.
And at first, I mean, like me, I didn't grow up really going to school. I wasn't very educated, so I really push education on them as much as possible. The beautiful thing is that I have my wife, that's my right hand, or I'm her right hand, and she's the one that they have to do this, Andy. They have to read. They have to, And now it got to the point where like, hey guys, can we go watch WrestleMania? Can you guys put the book down?
Yeah, I definitely get that. But it's great. That's how I got into writing. That's another avenue, honestly. I just read a ton of really good books, and I started thinking to myself, I would like to do this, but my own version. I want to try my hand at it, and I enjoyed the process enough that I just kind of kept rolling with it.
What kind of books do you like to read?
Well, it's going to be a long list. I'll try to distill it down to a few key ones.
Buddy, you have 40 more minutes to go. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Hell yeah. All right. Let's see. Well, I'll start at the beginning, I guess. Like the first ones that I remember reading that had a huge impact on me and now still inform what I like to read today. I started with books like Harry Potter, I think, came out around the time when I was 9 or 10. So I was about the same age as Harry Potter in the books, so it was a good fit. But then from there, I kind of went into other books. My aunt gave me this book called A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin, if you've ever heard of that one. No bells? Okay, you should read that one.
What's it called again?
It's called A Wizard of Earthsea. Earth as in like the planet, and then the word sea like ocean.
Okay.
One word. And it's got magic, it's got dragons, it's got a very interesting magic system. And Ursula Le Guin is like one of the great classic sci-fi fantasy writers. So definitely recommend her.
All right.
Let's see. I think Lord of the Rings I read together with my family. My mom and I read that one starting off together. Philip Pullman, his Dark Materials. They made that into a TV show recently, I think, or they started to, but the book series is excellent.
Have you read any of the Percy Jackson books?
I have not read them myself, but I do have a lot of students who read them, so I feel like I've read it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've talked about it, and I've worked on it with them in class and stuff so often that I might as well have read it by now. They seem really cool.
They got me into... I'm not a reader, dude. I'm sorry. When your book is on... if I can find the audio version of your book, trust me, man, I'll get to it. I'm not a reader. And they got me... a while back, I actually had them on the podcast. I think it was episode 50, where the boys are educating me on who Percy Jackson is. So pretty much the whole episode of Percy Jackson, right? And I just barely finished book 2 after a year or 2 years of reading the 2 books. That this guy told me just earlier today was like, Dad, you do understand there's like 19 more books, right? I'm like, Because he's like, when are you gonna start number 3? I'm like, wait, that was it, right? No, there's like 19 more books. Oh no.
Yeah. So I hear.
It's pretty. I mean, but it's pretty. It's what do you call it? It's I even though I'm listening to it on YouTube, I'm following along with the words. I feel like following along. I mean, again, for me, because if I were to read it, I twist words. I don't understand it very much. It's like, I don't read as fast as, like the lady on YouTube. She can read a whole chapter in 5 minutes. It'll probably take me 20. And so that's why I started doing that on YouTube, listening to the book on YouTube. But I technology, and so just this past like 2 weeks alone, I made it a goal to finish that second book. But then this guy slaps and was like, "There's 19 more." I'm like, "Oh, come on, dude."
One book at a time, though, right?
Yeah, I got 2 done.
Don't look at exactly. If you're trying to get to the top of the mountain, you don't keep looking at the summit. You look at the next checkpoint, right? That's the only way.
I'll read book number 3 in a year.
We'll be waiting.
You did mention audiobooks, though. I was going to make an announcement pretty soon on social media and stuff, but there is an audiobook in the works. It's going to be. It's officially underway. Timeline's a bit sketchy. We're not going to know for sure because it's just a bunch of us independent artists working together. But definitely within a year at the going rate, probably much sooner than that. So it's on its way, and then maybe you'll get a chance to see how crazy this story is.
I was actually thinking about the ones that you already have. Like if somebody can read them and put the video on YouTube, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, I've been considering it. I think for this current series that I'm working on, I definitely wanted to have. I didn't want to do the voice myself because I didn't feel like that represented the character as well, and I also wanted to give work to a different independent artist that I found because she's amazing.
There you go. Yeah.
We gotta support each other.
Yeah.
But for some of my older work, I feel like I could probably do a fairly decent job of narrating it with some level of skill. So I've also always wanted to break into voice acting, to be honest with you. I've been doing like weird impressions and accents and just bad celebrity impressions for a long time. So
the wife hates when I do Forrest Gump, or these guys hate when I do Mickey, because I won't stop. Oh, exactly. Oh, that one day. You gotta drive him crazy now. It's okay, Jojo. Don't leave.
I think I'll excuse myself out.
Well, I have other ones that are less ridiculous, hopefully, but yeah.
Yeah, one day I don't know. One day we'll get over me, and I just Jenny, and I just just talking like Forrest Gump in the house, and my wife's like, "Dude, get out."
Yeah, I probably drive my wife insane too. I have I can get like 3 or 4 good lines of practice out when I discover a new impression and I try to give it some practice, and then 3 or 4 lines in, she's like, "Okay, are you done? Is this the end? Can we skip to the part where you stop or you go away?" I'm kidding, but I imagine that I do exasperate her quite a bit because I do like to play.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, dude. We can drive our wives crazy sometimes, and they'll just they know us by now that if they know if they still don't know we're joking, then what's going on? I told a wife one time, like, if you don't know I'm joking, then we've been together for like 10 years now. Do you even know me? What's going on? Right. Like earlier, my son was being a bully to me, the older one, and I go and I hug my wife, and I'm hugging her. He's being mean to me, right? But when she's not looking, I'm flipping him off. I don't do that, right? I don't do that.
Sure.
But yeah, no, it's fun. It sounds like you have a good relationship with your wife when it comes down to your sense of humor. Or she tolerates your BS, and yes, my wife goes crazy
for now. Yeah,
for now.
Yeah. No, I think we get along well. We both like to laugh, and we have, I would say, a good sense of humor. Don't try to take ourselves too seriously. I used to take myself pretty seriously, and I was a lot less. I was a lot less happy and easygoing, and then I finally learned to calm down a bit. And life is a joke, and humanity is the punchline. So we just kind of we roll with it, right?
Yeah, these kids told me just this morning, Dad, it's okay if we're late. Relax. No, we gotta be there. So, how long you been married for?
Let's see. 2018. So, no, I know the answer. I just, math is not my strong suit.
That's right.
November 2018. So, what's that? It's just now 2023.
Almost 5 years? 4.5?
Yeah.
Going on 5?
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've been together since, years before that. We've been together since late 2014 or early 2015. So it's been a while.
Yeah, I met my wife in 2012. We've been married. We've been together for 10 years now, going on 11.
Yeah.
And she's done a good job at helping me raise these guys. Because it's funny because I just made a joke this morning. They'd be going crazy right now if it was just me. I think Nick even said, "What did he say this? What did he say this morning about if it wasn't for Mom?"
We would go crazy because he said he wanted to reuse the toothpaste.
so they, dude, Julian, man, they go through toothpaste like there's no tomorrow, man. 1 tube, man. So I don't get it. So I told them that we were gonna start to recycle our toothpaste. And the wife's like, that is so freaking disgusting. And then the other one said, yeah, Dad, thanks, Mom, that you're with us because this guy would have drove us crazy.
Yeah, I don't know about recycling the toothpaste, but I've definitely had this conversation with people in my family and my wife where, she squeezed from the top or the middle of the tube, and I'm like, it's from the bottom of the tube, or else it doesn't all come out. Come on.
See? Toothpaste is a big discussion, family, going on forward, man. Every podcast episode going forward is going to have a toothpaste conversation.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you use like this toothpaste that our dentist has recommended to us, it's more expensive than like your Colgate or whatever. So I try to be careful and I try to conserve resources when I can, of course. But then especially when it's like this smaller 4-ounce tube of toothpaste of like slightly more expensive stuff that's supposed to be good for your teeth. I'm like, get every
right?
fluid ounce out of that thing.
Cut it open and scrape your toothbrush inside.
Yeah. Well, for now, I'm just kind of I do sort of like from the base of the tube, and I kind of work my finger up, and I just kind of smooth it out. But
there you go.
Maybe one day I'll go off and get some scissors involved. We'll see.
Well, Julian here, little Julian, has a few questions for you about your books. He is waiting for number 3. He wants to know when are you going to have that one ready to go, because he is getting a little impatient with you, buddy. Not playing.
Well, I'm all for it. I'm here for the questions, and I guess just to answer the question about book 3, I'm actively working on it. Things are going along well. We're well on the way to finishing it. I'm sort of in the like editing, rewrite phase right now. So that's going to take a bit longer because I'm taking my time to make sure that I stick the landing on the trilogy. It's probably going to be a little bit longer on this book than the other 2 just because I don't want to mess it up.
And that's what I told him, mijo. He puts an update on Instagram every once in a while. He's working on the book, kid. And then because he's the one that got on Instagram chat with you, and he told you about the don't rush it like Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
Just to clarify, my son's never watched Game of Thrones.
No, I mean, well, and hey, good, because, so I read the first 4 books in the Game of Thrones series, and they're good, and I remember enjoying them. But then again, I was like 14, 15, and 16 when I read them, and I didn't read Winds of Winter, which came out several years ago. At this point, I assume that Martin's going to move on from this life before he finishes that series.
Right.
Because he kind of won, didn't he? Like, why do people become writers? Like, if you have the choice between sitting in your room and writing another book or partying with supermodels and, being interviewed by the umpteenth number late night show, I can kind of see why he's just sort of dragging his heels. Because
you're right.
If it never ends, then neither does the party.
Exactly.
But I'm not interested in partying. I'm interested in finishing stories. That's my passion. So
there you go. Well, then I'm going to give over the microphone over here to little Julian and let him ask his questions.
Okay, before I start my questions, I'm just saying, if someone important dies in the 3rd book, I don't think emotionally I can handle it.
Yeah, we're not yet in the spoiler part of the conversation, I assume, but also I'll keep it vague. But I think I know who you're referring to in book 2.
He's going to have to rewrite his whole book now because of you, dude.
Well, okay, so here's what I'll tell you. The first book is called The Rave, the second book is called The Rebel, and the third book is called The Ruin. So I can't say that everything is going to work out great
oh my God.
for everyone.
You already made him nervous, dude.
But I will tell you this. I'm not going to... art is not the same as life in that in life, things can happen randomly, and the world is an unpredictable and chaotic place. But stories are automatically structured. Like, regardless of the reason that you pick, you have to have a rationale behind the decisions that you make. So, if a character dies, I can assure you that it will be for very good reason, and it will be done with all the emotional well handling as possible.
Oh, he's not taking.
But I'm not saying that they do.
He's not taking that very well, buddy.
I'm not saying that anyone super important or critical is going to kick the bucket, but I also can't make any guarantees.
Okay, get your book.
Sorry.
Get your phone, dude.
Okay. My first question is not about the books, but how many cats do you have and what are their names?
An excellent question. I have 2 cats currently, and they are a handful. Their names are Charlie and Riddle. Charlie is an orange kind of tabby cat that my wife had before she met me, and her requirement for us working out as a couple was that Charlie approve of me. So I met Charlie, and it was I have a way with cats. I think they like my kind of quiet personality, and I let the cats come to me. That's my trick. I'm like, all right, here you are. I'm just going to sit down here. You come to me. I'm not going to go after you and like bother you in your space. Right. So Charlie and I came to an understanding where we're sort of like the co-alphas of the house, and that's the negotiation that we made so that I could date my wife and eventually marry her. And then my other cat's name is Riddle. She is Riddle, Riddle. And she's one that we got together. I chose the name Riddle because she always has her head kind of tilted to the side as if she is contemplating life's great mysteries. She's a calico cat.
Wow. Okay. My first question about the books.
Book number 1, questions.
Why? The first book was a roller coaster of emotions, and the second one was just worse.
Okay. I'll take that as a compliment.
That's why he said, why? All right, question number 2.
Okay, now real question. Why did her grandfather have to be the bad guy?
Okay. Why did her grandfather end up being the bad guy?
Specify her.
Alina's grandfather.
There you go.
Yeah, so the main character. I guess you probably get to see a bit more of that in book 2, right? You get to sort of see the unraveling of the mystery of what's really going on behind their relationship. And I'm allowed to talk about spoilers now. We're in the spoiler section, right?
Yeah, we're in the spoiler part of the podcast.
Go ahead.
Okay, just making sure. So in book 2, you learn that her grandfather really isn't her grandfather at all, right?
Yeah.
They're sort of like split off chunks of the same being. Like, you had an original being that reincarnated multiple times over the course of thousands of years, and then the latest incarnation, Dimas Kavich, split off a piece of his soul to create what would become Alina, right? Like sort of like a piece of his soul inside of a human body. So that's sort of preamble to say the reason that he's the villain, if you will, or maybe more accurately, the manipulator of events, the cause of the conflict is he has goals and objectives concerning New El and the Elemental Empire. He has an interest in seeing that destroyed.
Yeah.
Which you get a bunch of in book 2, but you're going to get even more of the reasoning behind that in book 3 and the escalation of that conflict. But he has his reasons, and he sort of had a plan originally before Alina was born, if you will, He had this organization that he was running to essentially embed resistance fighters or terrorists in like all different parts of the country to eat the empire apart from the inside out. But at some point after Alina was born, he started to soften a little bit. Something about their relationship and the consequences of, the deaths of people that he cared about and their relationship again, I guess, changed him. And it made him, for lack of a better term, more human. And so he changed his plans. Instead of it being him who was going to take down the empire with like sword and fire, he decided to pass the reins to Alina. He decided to create this kind of elaborate plan to get her involved so that she could take over. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So he read the book. It makes more sense to him than it does to me.
I'm
done. I'll see you guys later. You guys finish the podcast.
Yeah, I bet as soon as I was like, it's the same being, multiple incarnations, thousands of years. And he's like, okay, man.
I'm out.
Yeah. But it's all about trust. I would say that one of the recurring themes in the series is trust between people who care about each other. And Dimas doesn't really have the will to finish his plan the way that he originally intended. So he decides to give it over to Alina and see what she'll do with it. And it's interesting because he both is her and raised her, and is him and was raised by him. So it's sort of like a larger theme of the soul coming back together again, if you will. Yeah. That's all very complicated and whatever, hoopla. But I'd say the main takeaway is, like, to answer your question, he changed his mind. Alina changed him, and he decides to have faith in her.
Yeah.
But he manipulated her way up to the tower in order to test her, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now they're on the topic about Alina. Is she even, like, part human?
Technically, yes. There is part of her that is human, which is her body.
Yeah.
So in the second book, it is a little bit complicated, but what ends up happening is the nature of the creature that she is, that her grandfather is, they're sterile. They can't have children, or at least they can try, but the children don't ever survive.
Mm-hmm.
That's a better way to put it. So Dimas created 2 children using magic. He kind of like artificially created, by chunking off a piece of his soul, different versions of himself. And then he did the same thing with Alina, but the difference is that for Alina, he didn't make her from scratch. Dimas's daughter, Alina's mother, tried to have a child with a human man, and that child died before it turned 1 year old.
Yeah.
And that child was named Alina. But when the real human Alina died, Dimas was so heartbroken for his daughter, quote-unquote daughter, that he put a piece of his soul into the dead child and turned her into what she is today, right? A fraction of himself with the human body that continued to grow as if it was human. But that's where her mutations come from in the first book. She's got like stuff on her arms and the feathers popping out. It's her elf soul breaking through her human body.
That makes sense.
So she's half human, half elf? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, her body is human, but her spirit, her soul, her animus, and all of her magical powers come from the fact that she's a magical entity. So the body is human, so that half of her is human, but the soul part of her is inhuman.
I should have read these books.
Should have.
It can be pretty trippy, but that's just how I roll.
It's interesting. All right, go for it. Next question.
Next question. Did you really have to kill Orden?
Yeah, interesting. Well, let me fire off a question for you back, just to see, and then I'll answer, I promise. But what did you think of Ivian?
Ivian?
Orden's quote-unquote sister.
Oh. Well, she wasn't really mentioned in the first book, and then in the second book, that was just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a bit of the focus. Well, this is sort of it pops up in one of the later chapters, but since we're spoiling, here we go. Orden is Ivian.
Yeah.
Ivian is Orden. So Orden dies in book 1.
In his body.
I mean, he does legitimately die. But there is a facility in the country somewhere, a secret computer, like supercomputer farm, where the most powerful, influential, and rich people can resurrect inside of bodies that they can clone or construct.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
So this comes up again more in book 3. Like, more details about that facility will be made clear. Won't talk about that, but I will say that Ivian being, like, coming from a trillionaire family, Orden, well, I should say Orden, really, because that's who it is. Orden, when he died, he saw an opportunity. He decided to kind of throw his sister, his real sister, in a bunker so she couldn't reveal the truth, and then he took on her identity so that he could, number 1, manipulate Alina in book 2, and number 2, further his ambitions, but without any of the kind of baggage of being Orden. Because Orden, his identity was sort of compromised. There were people inside of the Sanctum who wanted him dead. There were people inside of the government who ordered the Sanctum to kill him. So instead, he decided to switch to a new identity, but one that he knew very well and could easily imitate.
So for us dummies, he killed some person to become another. He killed himself to in a way.
Yeah, like he in the first book, he gets crushed by a giant mechanical dragon. Like, he just gets flattened like a pancake, and it's a whole thing.
All right, just making sure. The Raven, right? Is it
The Rave.
The Rave?
The Rave.
I need the Rave for Dummies book written, and I need the, what is it, the number 2?
The Rebel.
The Rebel book for Dummies as well, please.
I'll get on it, yeah. So Orden gets crushed, right? And then what he does, what's revealed in the second book, is that he, with the way that he frames it, he brought his sister into a secret, safe location. But we're never really sure if he didn't just go ahead and kill her. He's definitely capable of doing that kind of thing because he's proven himself to be ruthless and a manipulator.
Yeah.
So, up to you to decide.
Is Big Julian lying, or is he on point?
No, he's on point.
All right.
Pretty suspicious.
Pretty suspicious, he says. Speak up.
All right. Yeah. Okay. What made you come up with the idea of New L being built in the sky?
It's a very good question. Okay. Let's see. So I wrote a book on writing, a few of them actually. I'll drop the name of one that I thought was particularly good. It's called The Anatomy of Story. I always talk about this book. I should really get like some sort of a sponsorship kickback from this guy. But,
right?
The Anatomy of Story by John Truby. The last name is Truby. And one of the things that I found very interesting about that book was talking about oppositions. So think about Alina versus Bahram. Bahram is like her adopted older brother and the number 1 most impressive monster hunter in the world. Mm-hmm. And then Alina is unlicensed and unrecognized and, like, you know, not even on the record anywhere. Like, no one takes her seriously versus Bahram. Everyone takes him seriously. So they're opposites in that way. I promise I'm getting to the point. But so they're also opposites in the sense that Bahram literally does sky magic and Alina literally does earth magic, right? Earth and sky.
Yeah.
And so Nuel is built in the sky. One thing, I thought it would be cool to have like a floating miniature planet with skyscrapers poking out in all directions with artificial gravity. And then the chains, I just thought, like, well, wouldn't that be sweet? But thematically, the reason that Nuel is in the sky is to further the division, right? Alina is earth-based. Bahram is sky-based. The enemy lives in the sky, where they are powerful and they can see everything. Alina is an ant walking around, the underdog, right? It's just to further that symbolic and thematic difference. But if I'm really being honest, the first reason was, like, how do I make a chained floating planet city super cool? Like, I just thought that would be a cool thing to have and a good attention grabber. But
that's cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, these are book 2 questions now.
Okay.
My favorite character, Mesumi. He was the coolest. And then he had to die. Why?
Why?
All right. Sip of water. Let me think.
You got him, Jojo. You got him, Julian. You got him, Jojo.
No, okay. I do have an answer for this. All right. So, I don't know if I first read about this, but the rule of thumb, and I talked with my friend about this too, my writer friend, Silas Jackson, very good writer. I can talk more about his work at some point too, but he and I always talk about, what feels right, what's good for the story, and we both agreed that the only way that you can assassinate a character is if they...
His jaw just dropped, bro.
I'm going a bit over the top on purpose, but the only way when it's acceptable to kill a character is if they have... Like, you would never just do it for shock value. You can only do it if that thing is vital to the story and if everything else that they could possibly have achieved afterwards as themselves is not more valuable than their death, right? So that's kind of a weird way of saying this. Mesame is one of my favorite characters too. And I actually cried when I killed him because it hurt. He was the comic relief. He was amusing. He was heartfelt. He was probably the best person in their whole team, Yeah. Like in terms of like his morality, his decency, his kindness. He always looked out for everyone else. But that's the thing, right? What happens when you eliminate heart of a group, when you eliminate moral center or the person who's just always going to be fundamentally good, the paragon, the paladin? When you kill that person, you drive the other characters to action, vengeance, the pursuit of the end. That is the thing. Like, Mesame's death is the reason that Alina and Cho and all the other characters fight, right? They probably would have given up. I don't think they would have taken on the challenge in quite the same way. Cho maybe not, at least, because Cho was kind of like backing away from the fight after what happened to her friend Kineas and after what happened to some of the other people who she forced with. Mm-hmm. She was starting to see that the people around her were suffering and dying. But then when Mesame died, that was a straw too far. She knew who to blame, she knew who was responsible, and she decided that she was going to do something about it. So I did not write Mesame's death in there just to create the shock value, although it probably is shocking when it happens, and that's just a bonus, I guess. Right?
I almost cried.
Yeah, well, and it's very touching to hear that, because it validates me and it makes me feel like I must have done something right if you cared enough about him to find it made an impression when he was killed. And it's supposed to, right? It's supposed to be meaningful. Yeah.
This guy multiple times, Dad, this book's an emotional roller coaster, man.
Yeah. Well, I'll just summarize by saying this. Nothing I ever do is done lightly. I actually agonized about it. I was talking with my friend Silas. I was talking with other people, like my very close, like alpha readers, if you will. And I was saying, does it make sense? And they all came back with the same answer, which is, you suck, but we understand. Right?
Wow.
So, like, that's kind of what you want with the death of a character. If it's a character like that, not a villain, like a main character, you want people to think, I hate you, but I understand why you did that. I understand what that does for the story.
What do you think?
So hopefully you'll get some of that.
What do you think, Jojo?
So sad.
So sad. He's still not agreeing with you,
fair.
man. He's not agreeing with you, dude.
I'll take my lumps. If it's worth any consolation, he's not fully dead because he's inside of Alina's being. Right?
Yeah.
So, there are some workarounds potentially there, because if you recall, Dimas was able to split his soul.
Mm-hmm.
And Mesame lives inside of Alina's soul now.
So what Julian is saying to you, Jojo, is that too bad, so sad, you already bought the books.
No refund.
No refund.
Exactly. Yeah, all sales final.
Are you got any other questions for him?
Yeah. How do you pronounce what Alina's grandfather was?
Like his name,
like what when he was the monster?
The species name.
Yeah.
Talagan Bubak.
Oh yeah, I would have never guessed that.
It's inspired by some Eastern European names and languages that I was looking at, because the flavor of Dimas's creature, the old man in the swamp, basically like the male version of a witch. It's meant to be very reminiscent of, like Romanian legend and, maybe a little bit of Hungarian mixed in there. So I chose some kind of like fantasy syllables that would fit in with that, if that makes sense. So yeah, Talagan Bubak.
Okay.
We're going to make that into a ringtone?
Yeah.
What else you got, buddy?
I think I ran out, because he explained that one. He explained the 10th one I had.
What was the 10th one?
The plot twist with Orden, which is at the end of the second book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess I did kind of cover that in passing. Let's see. Was there anything else to say about that? Orden, secretly his sister. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, that's just surprising. I did not expect that at all.
Good. I'm glad. I was a bit worried, I mean, maybe worried isn't the right word, but I always try to layer in hints so that you can go back and be like, wait, I knew it. But I didn't want to have it be so obvious that you would guess it right out of the bat. Right off the bat, rather. Yeah,
like in the second book when Alina ran into the girl and like I forgot what her name was. I forgot what name it was, but when Alina first met her in the first book at the preening peacock.
Peacock. Oh, Vesa Stardrop. Yeah. Yeah,
I was like, that sounds familiar, and then I went to the second book and that's when I found it. I was like, oh, that's where she's from.
Yeah, that's right. Vesa, another very important character. I layered it in there so that, like, it really doesn't matter if you remember her at all, because clearly she remembers Alina, and Alina doesn't remember her very much, but at first, at least.
Yeah.
Or pretends not to. But I try to leave in little breadcrumbs like that, too. When I'm writing the next book in the series, I always go back to the previous ones to try to, like, pick out little things that I want to keep the thread going. So.
Yeah.
So you're talking to the guy that put you through this emotional roller coaster. Dude, he's all yours, Jojo. Get him. Get him.
Well, technically speaking,
I can take it.
We're on the phone. I can't do anything physically.
Well, that's, and I'm very grateful by the sound of it. I should be. But, there are other ways that you could tackle me. And I'm a tough guy. I can take it. I'm here for the commentary, the criticism, all above. So
just talk to Julian about what you were going through. Talk to Julian, little Julian. Talk to big Julian about what you were going through as you were reading the books. How many? I saw him in tears at one point.
Yeah, it's like something good would happen, and then something terribly wrong would ruin it.
Yeah. I mean, you got to kind of, like, what is a story if not just a series of failures right before the characters ultimately succeed or fail finally and die, right? Like, I mean, that's basically what a story is. Like, character wants to go to the store to get milk, but a bunch of obstacles get in the way. In a short story, maybe one or two obstacles get in the way. In a novel, maybe 10 or 15. So it's really just like the basic framework of a story is how much can you mess with your characters. And I'm a big fan of making my characters' lives as difficult as possible, as you probably have noticed.
Yeah.
My question is the font size. Why did you go from a bigger font size to a very tiny font size?
Aha, yes, I can comment on this. Well, not by choice, I will tell you that. I don't mean to throw Amazon under the bus. I'm kidding. I definitely do mean to, come at me, Bezos. I'm all fine. I'm just kidding. Don't come at me.
I doubt he'll listen to this little podcast, bro. Don't worry about it. I got like 20 people download. That's it, man. Don't worry about it.
Well, but what if one of those 20 people knows a guy who knows a guy?
Right?
But no, I mean, like, to be perfectly honest, the hardcover restrictions are such that you cannot go above a certain page count on the hardcover. So I had to make some tough choices. Like, the hardcover for the Rebel doesn't have the glossary, even though the paperback does. and then I had to ratchet the font size down to just under a 10, like between a 9.5 and a 10, just to be able to make that page count. And the margins are pretty slim. You definitely need your bifocals on to be able to handle it. But I made the choice just because I wanted to have the hardcover available for people who wanted that collector's set on their shelves. And yeah, that's basically the short answer. Amazon restrictions, or else I definitely would have ramped it up and had a bigger book.
You had to have a certain page limit? Like, really?
Yeah. Yeah, and actually the paperback of The Rebel also is like 2 pages under the page limit for a paperback.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So when are you going to make a book where the font's like this big for like a guy like me?
Yeah. Well, I guess you can putz around with the ebook settings. Then there they have the nice feature of being able to expand and contract the text, which is great.
Right.
But I've had to keep this in mind for the third book. I was going to make it lengthwise between the Rave and the Rebel anyway. But now I just have one more good reason to keep it tight, because if I made it any longer, I would not be able to publish with them. Basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
That explains the font.
So,
Yeah, like the first one took me only 9 days to read it. The second one took like 2 months.
yeah, well, that's the thing, right? It's deceptive because they're the same size on the shelf, but then because of the font size, you're like, my God, these pages are so much denser. Like, it's like, even though they're the same number of pages, the hardcover versions at least, the hardcover version of the Rebel has it's about 100,000 words longer than the first one. To put that in perspective, the first book is 160,000 words long. The second one is 270,000 words. But they're the same size on the shelf, so that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing he complained a couple of times. Dad, this font, one page takes for like 3 days to read.
Yeah, well, hey, more bang for your buck, more bang per page content, I guess you could look at it that way. But yeah, I hear you, and I definitely would do it differently if I had the option.
He really did enjoy your books. Like I said, I would watch my son read your books multiple times, and when he would mention something, the older one would be like, shut up, dude, I haven't, because he hasn't read them yet, because he's been waiting for this guy to finish them off so that he can start it. But he's reading a book right now. He says, once I'm done with this one, he's going to start your first one. But every time this guy would say something, that's why he's not here, because he doesn't want any spoilers.
Yeah.
And
this would be a
he doesn't listen to my podcast anyway. Anyways, if it's Taylor Swift's not on my podcast, he will not listen. And he would mention something. No, I don't want to hear it. But no, I saw little Julian here, pretty much read the book with excitement. He does this thing with his hands when he gets all excited, when he's reading something, and then you see him like all down. And what happened, mijo? This guy killed someone, But you really had him. You really had, and for the past I'm gonna say month and a half, Dad, when's the third one? I don't know. But guess what? We're gonna have him on the podcast. You ask him.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the compliment. I really appreciate it, Julian. I'm glad that you enjoy. That's honestly like why I do this. I write because I want to connect with people, and I want to give them the experience that I got out of, and that I still get out of reading just a very good book. My dream is to write something that people can turn to and say, like that it meant something to them. That's my purpose in life. So it's just nice that you liked it. What can I say? It's very very kind of you to say.
Yeah, they were really good books. It's just like, that's crazy.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm working on the third one, and I can promise you this: you'll be among the very first people to know. As soon as I know when it's coming out, I will shoot you guys a message for sure. So you're on the list of priorities.
Yeah, I told my dad the third one comes out, you're buying it.
Yeah, and maybe we can work out a way to get you a signed copy. I think through Amazon I'd have to ship it to myself first and then to you, but we can probably make that happen.
But
if that's of interest to you.
But you've made my son so happy with these books that my son, little Julian here, is not an excited person to come on my podcast. I've begged him in the past to come on. The moment I told him you were going to come on, he's been so excited ever since. Don't let this face fool you, but he's been excited. And I'm like, well, you got to have questions for him. And he was like, I'm like, you can't. Every question can't be about somebody dying, man. You gotta be creative.
But every question was.
So
yeah, I mean, hey, those are the big moments for sure.
So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for entertaining my son with your books, and obviously, yeah, we'll figure it out where, I don't care to pay extra to ship it to your house and then have it shipped back to my house, just so he can have that signed copy, because eventually I'm getting my money back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a long-term investment, I suppose. Yeah.
And again, man, like I said, man, I want to thank you for entertaining my son. Thank you for coming to my podcast. And usually I just talk to people that want to come on here and vent. And today I thought I'd change it up a little bit and talk to somebody who, has kind of in a way been a part of my kids' lives with his books. And like I said, I thank you for what you did for him, in a way.
Well, it was such a pleasure to talk to you both. I really enjoyed the conversation. I don't get to often have a conversation about, like, why did this happen and whatever, because, I'm still just kind of a no-name author for sure. But it was such a treat to talk to you both. I really enjoyed it. And again, just thank you so much for the compliment, for having me. And I'm just honestly so thrilled that you liked it and are excited about the third book. It makes my week. And I will deliver you a product that is worthy of the wait.
Wow. You hear that?
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Well, Julian, thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for sitting down and talking to my son. And like I end every podcast, thank you for writing with me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you both again for having me. I guess if anyone does find me out in the wilderness as a result of this, always feel free to reach out. I love talking with people about writing, reading, my books, whatever the case may be. And if anyone does find my books, The Rave or The Rebel in the Wilderness, they want to drop that's all super helpful, because we're an indie operation. And as I always say, every review leads more cool people like you guys to me, and that helps me pay for cat food. And cat food doesn't grow on trees.
All right, buddy. Thank you for being on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Ride With Me, the Flat Tire Indie Podcast. You can also listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, and Podbean.